In this short video, I'll be talking to you about the international relations key concept of security. Like most things, it's not set in stone. Ideas have changed over time, so I'll be talking about three differing concepts of security. I'll begin with the traditional state-centric ideas about national security, then I'll move on to collective or international security, and I'll complete the story by looking at non-traditional human-centric definitions of security. Traditional approaches to security did so solely from the perspective of the nation-state, focusing on external military threats. This meant that national security policy concentrated on building military power to ensure the capacity to defend the nation if attacked. With enough military personnel, weapons and technology, any aggressor might also think twice about attacking the nation, so a strong military provides a deterrent factor too. For smaller nations, national security also focuses on building alliances with other states for protection. This can be with a great power, like Australia's alliance with the US, or it can be an alliance of a whole bunch of states so that together they can balance the power of a powerful state. The conception of national security, with its concentration on military power, had its heyday during the Cold War. One of the main aspects of this was the building up of military force through an arms race. This is very expensive and difficult to maintain over the long period and didn't exactly make the world feel safer. The end of the Cold War called for a reassessment of security policy. The emphasis moved on to taking into account the huge increased connections between states due to globalisation, the danger of arms races, the heavy burden of defence spending, and the changing nature of threats to people's daily lives. This gave impetus to the formulation of a definition of security less focused on military power and more inclusive of economic, social, political and environmental issues. From this perspective, relations between states constitute a global society. All members of that society have shared interest in peaceful coexistence and the survival of each other. Who can you trade with if other nations fail? How do you protect your foreign investment if a nation is invaded? Such shared interest in keeping the peace leads to cooperation between states to ensure stability. Such ideas about collective security encompass all states globally in taking a collective response to address a wide range of possible threats. The idea goes back to the League of Nations after World War I, but took a while to get some traction. After the Second World War, the UN Security Council was established as the main institution to implement collective security to maintain peace and security internationally. As US President Franklin D. Roosevelt said at the time, "When peace has been broken anywhere, the peace of all countries everywhere is in danger." Collective security is based on the risk of retribution, but it can also involve economic and diplomatic responses in addition to military retribution. These kinds of sanctions have been imposed on North Korea by suspending the food aid program until they return to the negotiating table on dismantling their nuclear weapons program. But the concerns of collective security go beyond the military realm to include a wider array of security problems. Such security problems as widespread famine, refugee crises, and climate change-related security issues have been recognised as requiring a collective international response to ensure security of neighbouring states and others. The idea of collective security broadened the idea of security to include a global society. Taking this a step further, the idea of human security considers it is also the responsibility of the international community to ensure members of the global society are protected. The core idea embodied by human security is that the security of the person, the security of the state, and the security of the international society of states are fundamentally interconnected. You cannot have one without the others. In describing what human security is, former Secretary General of the United Nations Kofi Annan wrote in 2001, "During the Cold War, security tended to be defined almost entirely in terms of military might and the balance of terror. Today, we know that security means far more than the absence of conflict. We also have a greater appreciation for non-military sources of conflict. We know that lasting peace requires a broader vision encompassing areas such as education and health, democracy and human rights, protection against environmental degradation, and the proliferation of deadly weapons. We know that we cannot be secure amid starvation, that we cannot build peace without alleviating poverty, and that we cannot build freedom on foundations of injustice. These pillars of what we now understand as the people-centred concept of human security are interrelated and mutually reinforcing." So we see that human security puts people at the centre of security concerns. To tolerate personal insecurity in one state risks spreading insecurity to other states and, by extension, international society itself. For example, human rights violations in one state may spark refugee flows that cross borders, which in turn create a problem of asylum seekers in other states and a consequent matter of concern for international agencies like the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. A similar chain effect might be seen with regard to terrorism or civil war or other threats which threaten to overrun international frontiers. Human security focuses primarily on protecting people while promoting peace. It emphasises aiding individuals by using a people-centred approach for resolving inequalities that affect security. So we can see from our consideration of national security, collective security and human security that there's much more to security than just armed forces, advanced weaponry and alliances. It is clear that in the globalised world of today, security threats across the world are having an increasing effect on people living in nations far from the epicentre of trouble. As the problems facing many people across the world become increasingly intractable, ideas on security have been evolving to see if it can move past the focus on state sovereignty and the problems this entails. The relevance of protecting human beings for international security has now been recognised, but it's the implementation that's proving difficult. It's all very well to recognise that something must be done, but to risk the lives of soldiers from one nation to protect people from another nation usually requires a great deal more than this. While the Cold War wound down for a while so that other ideas began to get some traction, the attacks of September 11, 2001 brought the conception of national security back with a vengeance. Changes in the global distribution of power have led to the build-up of defences against new external threat perceptions such as foreign interference, terrorism and cyber attacks. Whether a concentration on the power of nation-states is the right way to deal with the real and pressing threats associated with a changing climate is a matter of conjecture. What do you think is the best way forward for finding a lasting global peace? Or am I just a dreamer? Hopefully I'm not the only one. I'm Diane Colman. Thanks for watching.